If there's anything you need to learn from me, it's that. I'm always right. Last year, I read Blood of Hercules, a dark romantasy book based on Greek mythology. It was supposed to be a retelling of the story of Hercules, but it was actually just a patchwork nightmare of Greek myths, Roman figures, and spice so bad you have me looking back fondly of my read of Ugly Love. Because surely a romance between step-siblings and joking about big balls couldn't have been that bad in comparison. Needless to say, the book caused me so much distress that I crowned it the worst read of 2024. But wouldn't you know it, Blood of Hercules is only book 1 in a larger series. And you all wanted so badly for me to read the second book. I have been getting comments non-stop across all my social media asking me if I was going to read the book. Well, it came out a couple weeks ago, and guess who was the poor soul that was first in line for the audiobook at her local library? Me. So after 2 weeks of trying to get through this audiobook and getting so worked up that I accidentally gave myself a concussion from throwing my head back so far in disgust, and that's not who she's— oh my god, I hit my head. I am now here to give you my review. Let's just say, this book definitely raised the bar. Not only is it the worst read of 2025, but honestly, it's probably the worst series of all time. Now, surely you're saying to yourself, Kristen, do you have to be so nasty? Why are you being so mean about this? I'm admitting to you right now that I'm a hater. If this book has 1 million haters, I'm one of them. If this book has 1 hater, I'm the one. If this book has 0 haters, then that means that I am dead and they buried my body with my mouth sewn shut. Otherwise, my ghost would be talking shit. So without further ado, hello. Welcome back. It is a new day, a new sleigh, and a new video where I have something to say, and today I will be reviewing Bonds of Hercules. So yes, I'm a hater, but I'm never a liar. I have multiple pages of evidence supporting the claims that I'm going to be making in this video, including pages of handwritten notes. The script I'm reading off of is 46 pages. I've got plenty of clips from the audiobook, direct quotes, and actual textual evidence to support my claim that this book is the worst read of 2025. I am so committed, in fact, to reading this book to filth that not only did I get the audiobook, I bought the ebook. I spent $12.99 of my hard-earned money on a book I don't even like, just so I could make sure that anything I was saying was accurate. Granted, I did also buy the book against my will and because I had no other choice, but my sacrifice still stands. So as I already mentioned, this is book 2 in the series. First was Blood of Hercules, second is Bonds. If you'll remember from my review of book 1, the story follows our main character, Alexis Hurt. She finds out that she's a Spartan and has to go through these trials to essentially claim her power. She finds out at the end of the book that she is actually the long-lost daughter of Hades and Persephone, Hercules. We're taking some liberties with the source material, but it gets even worse, so don't even trip about this right now. And Alexis essentially gets roped into an arranged marriage between her 2 teachers that were helping her through the crucible, is what they called it. And their names are Augustus and Karen. So the book ends with her finding out that the men that forced her into an arranged marriage are, surprise, evil. And she gets so mad that she storms away. Enter book 2. Bonds of Hercules. This book follows Alexis as she joins the Chthonic military, which is called the Assembly of Death. After joining, she becomes eligible to participate in the Spartan Gladiator competition, also known as the SGC. And basically the whole book is her trying to learn how to use her powers because she's Hercules and she has poison blood or something. All while she's still trying to fix her marriage with her 2 husbands. Yeah, this is still a romance book, so do with that information what you will. Oh yeah, meanwhile, like plot, because something actually has to happen in these books, we are also on the lookout for Medusa, who has broken out of a prison in the underworld. The summary is admittedly pretty short, but honestly, that is all that happens in the book. We got fixing a broken marriage, learning to use powers, and Medusa. And somehow, the book is still 15 hours long and 500 pages. Anyway, that's the summary of the book. I am now going to go into my beat-for-beat explanation of the plot, along with my critiques, because there are so many. So before I even touch the actual events of the book, I need to explain to you why it became necessary for me to purchase a copy of Bonds of Hercules despite already having the audiobook. As I already mentioned, I did get the audiobook from Libby, so technically it wasn't necessary for me to also get a digital copy. But very quickly, I realized that the narration of this audiobook is so abysmal and incomprehensible that I needed to physically read what was in the book in order to understand what was happening. So my specific critiques about the audiobook narration is that everything is very dramatized. The dialogue tags are taken literally. So for example, if a character is saying some kind of dialogue and it ends with like, I heaved, or I coughed, or I whispered, all of those actions are taken literally.
I coughed as the world spun. With a groan, I stood up to leave.
So I would have literal coughing sounds going into my eardrums at a very loud volume. Anytime she would whisper, I would have to raise the volume because I could not hear it. And then when she would go back to normal, I would again blast my eardrums.
Our bond was breaking. They were dying because of me. Augustus cradled me against his chest as he carried me through the Roman streets. A broken sob ripped from my throat.
Typically with audiobooks, and I have listened to quite a few of them, these things aren't taken that literally. If a character has to whisper, they usually make use of what's called the stage whisper. If you're not a theater kid, a stage whisper is essentially when an actor will make their voice sound really breathy, but they still project so that you can hear. That is not utilized in any such way in this audiobook. The worst part by far is the voice that she assigns to Alexis's animal companion, Nyx. In case you don't remember, Nyx is a snake, so surely the obvious conclusion on how to portray her voice is to hiss out all the S's, all of them. I genuinely thought that that was how the book was written. No, there are no extra S's. This was a choice. The worst part is when you listen to the audiobook and you hear Nyx talking, right? You can hear the spit in the back of those S's. It truly sounds like someone is doing ASMR of eating Rice Krispie cereal. The snap, crackle, pop almost had me at my limit.
Yes, electrocute him to death. We have no mercy on our enemies.
Not to mention that the voice she assigns for the male characters is just awful. I really don't want to be that mean about the audiobook narration, but it was truly aggravating. And I don't know how this specific narrator has done other male voices in the past, but in this book, she gives Karen and Augustus a voice that is so low and so very obviously outside of her register that it just comes out as gravel and vocal fry.
Welcome, wife, Karen said quietly. We've been waiting for you.
Now, normally, I'm someone that likes to listen to an audiobook in at least 1.5 times speed. This book, there were times, especially when the men were talking, that I had to put the audiobook in 0.5 times speed to understand what they were saying. I have so many examples, and I was getting frustrated listening to this audiobook. It got to a point where I was looking forward to the male perspective chapters because at least I could understand them. So in short, I had to buy a copy of a book I already had in audio form because it was so incomprehensible and I couldn't understand what the narrator was saying. I tried so genuinely. I lowered the speed. I would replay certain chapters if I just wasn't understanding. But that is not a normal reading experience. No one should be expected to do that. It was beyond aggravating, but perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. So up until this point, I had never actually seen what any of the physical copies of these books look like. Upon my purchase of the ebook for Bonds of Hercules, I discovered that there are absolutely no paragraphs. Let me explain. The way that this ebook is formatted, each sentence is on its own line. I'll put an example on the screen where essentially the lines in the book are listed out as opposed to being in a bigger chunk of text. And I literally counted them out where this is like about half a page and the most amount of sentences you get on a single line is 2. Now, at first, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe it's because I'm reading a section that just has more dialogue. But very quickly, as I'm getting through this book, I'm realizing that the trend is not going away. There are still blocks of text that there's no dialogue, people aren't talking, it's just the characters' inner thoughts. and they're all on separate lines. Then I thought, okay, well, maybe this is just the formatting error. I have the ebook, I don't have a physical paper copy. Perhaps that's why it looks like that. But then I looked at the other ebooks that I had in my library and they don't look like that. Then, because I kept trying to come up with reasons to defend this, I checked other romantasy titles. I looked at Fourth Wing, ACOTAR, and Alchemized, and none of them look like that. You can see the visible difference between the books, which, you know, one might say this is a stylistic choice. Typically, if there's a lone sentence that is broken off from a paragraph, it's because the author wants you to focus on that one sentence. It has some kind of emotional emphasis, or it's a big information reveal. Otherwise, like, they want to draw your eye to that point. Now, if we look at the examples from Fourth Wing and ACOTAR, on the first page of both books, they do have this lone sentence, but in both instances, you can see that this is done purposefully to convey the hopelessness of the character and show what kind of situation they're in. The minute you have me comparing books to ACOTAR and Fourth Wing, and they're the better versions, hell has frozen over. But in comparison, in Bonds of Hercules, there seems to really be no rhyme or reason. A lot of these sentences could very easily be grouped up into a bigger paragraph, but I have two theories as to why they're not. First theory is that the book is so disjointed and has no flow that there is no possible way to connect these thoughts except by having them on separate lines. And the second theory, which I think is the real reason, is that it's easier to read. So there is actually a science to the way books are formatted. We as authors know that if you're reading through a big block of text, that your mind is going to wander. You're going to forget to a certain degree what was written if it's in a very big block of text. That's why we break it up with dialogue or chapter breaks, or otherwise we separate the paragraphs so they're not that long. Either way, these visual breaks are very intentional, and it's done in a way to make sure that you're still capturing the reader's attention. So by breaking a book up like this and having a sentence on its own separate line, it makes it nearly impossible for you to lose your place, but to a point that I would argue it's overkill. At this point, it's a list, not a book, which leads me to believe that the audience for a book like this might not actually enjoy reading. And I do say this as someone that specifically chooses audiobooks because it's more accessible for me. My mind tends to wander when I have a physical copy, and I have an astigmatism, okay? It's incredibly hard for me to read, especially if the text is really small. Now, by no means is this book written this way to help people that may struggle to pay attention. No, I'm saying that the book is written like a list to attract the kinds of readers that are only trying to get to the spice as fast as possible. To sum it up, I think the thought process for how this book was formatted was, why waste time say lot word when few word do trick? And the last thing I'll say before I actually get into the content of the book, they do provide us with some images at the beginning for Charon, Augustus, Achilles, and Patro. I do want to focus on the image provided for Achilles, which I am calling on any and all artists that are in my comment section and that are watching this video. I need you to verify this for me, because I'm looking at this photo of Achilles and something in me, it doesn't sit right. Like, his arm looks way too tiny, right? This dude is supposed to be 6'7". He's a big dude, right? Like, his arm is supposed to be what? Around half of your height? Shouldn't his arm be longer? Something about the way that his arm is just kind of like scrunched up behind. That doesn't look right to me. Not to mention that the color of his mask and a weird chunk of hair on the top of his head is strangely discolored from the rest of the photo. Again, I don't know if this is just like an ebook thing, but this doesn't look right to me. I need someone to verify. Is this made by AI? Already, we're off to a bad start with this book, and I haven't even discussed what it's actually about. So now I'm going to give you a rundown of absolutely everything that happens in this book. So Bonds of Hercules opens with a chapter from Fate, which is someone that can predict the future or whatever. And it starts with a redacted prophecy. Now I will point out that we do get a chunk of this prophecy in book 1, but they're different. So the prophecy in book 1 starts, "The lost one shall change what is before, chained to death's soldiers, becoming evermore, or Titans will inherit the earth, and there will be nothing but war." So in book 2, that prophecy has the same first 2 lines, "The lost one shall change what is before," whatever, right? But it continues with a different line. At the beginning of the book, this part is scrambled, so we don't know what it actually says, but at the end, we figure out that it's supposed to say, Her healing light shall mend the injured four. It's supposed to be the same prophecy. Why do they end differently? Not even the grammar is the same. In book one, it has, I think, semicolons or commas or some kind of grammar to suggest that it's a different but part of the same sentence. In book two, there's just nothing. It's just empty space. So why they are different, I have no idea. Anyway, Alexis is on the island of Crete with her parents, Persephone and Hades. Hades is preparing her for what's called the Assembly of Death's hunt, where she will essentially be initiated into their ranks. So they teleport to this place where Alexis comes face to face with her husband, who she has not seen since she left them in book one. I don't know what the time difference is between these two books, but it's substantial, I guess. Alexis's friend Drex is also there, which surprises everyone because he's an Olympian. Apparently he was exiled from Olympus. First, I have to explain to you that these people are in two different species. So you have the regular humans and then you have the Spartans, but the Spartans are divided between the Olympians and the Chthonics. The Olympians are Zeus, Hera, Athena, Hermes, Poseidon, Demeter, Apollo, and Dionysus. And the Chthonics are Ares, Hades, Artemis, and Aphrodite. Now, with that in mind, yes, they are immortal and yes, they have magical powers, but from what I'm understanding, they're not technically gods in this world. Like, they're essentially just like superhuman because, oh my God, I cannot hold on to this information. They praise God in this book, like Christian capital G God. We have multiple prayers. We get Father John, this character who, again, if you'll remember from my review of book one, is never explained. We never meet this dude. It's just people start referencing, oh my God, Father John would have said this. But then it's also weird because the Spartans praise Kronos as their god, but then God, capital G, exists still. I'm very confused. The sheer image that you have the Greek gods praising capital G God is... Listen, I'm not going to say much, but all I'll say is that I've read two books this year that I thought were particularly bad, and they share one commonality, and it just seems like someone's always there at the scene of the crime. That's all I'll say. That's the world building aspect of the story. Again, the Greek mythological undertones are very convoluted. It's like a LaCroix whisper of what the mythology is supposed to be. It doesn't make sense. Regardless, that's nothing to get worked up about. Drex is now also enlisting in the Assembly of Death. He is technically an Olympian. If you'll remember from my review of book one, I do not remember who his godly parent is, and it would be helpful, see, because the way that these characters are named, at least this was how they kept it in the first book, was that the last name was the name of their, like, not godly parent. They wanted to make sure that we knew that Drex was Asian, so his name is Drex Chang. Yeah, they didn't mention that in book two, which leads me to believe that maybe they wanted us to forget that little detail. No, the J.K. Rowling curse continues, I see. Regardless, he is exiled because his mentor from book one, his name is Theros, and Theros was killing off all of Zeus's offspring because Theros is technically the heir to the house of Zeus and he didn't want anyone threatening his lineage. It was a whole thing. It came up in, like, no joke, the last 10% of the book. It's apparently very important to the plot of this book, which I find very funny because it's not central to book one at all. So Alexis and Drex essentially have to run a marathon through a forest. It's 25 miles, and they have to avoid getting caught in order to join the Assembly of Death. Meanwhile, they'll be chased down by the other Chthonics, including Augustus, Charon, Patro, Achilles, Agatha, and Hermos. Now, this Agatha and Hermos people, I don't remember them from book one at all, but the way that they're brought up is like, oh, you should know who they are? Now, in this first chapter, I already clocked that this book is not proofread because towards the end of, again, chapter one, Artemis, who they affectionately call arthritis. This is supposed to be like cute, quirky, funny, like Artemis, parentheses, arthritis. Were you born on the Disney Channel? What in the manic pixie dream girl? This pissed me off more than it should have, but honestly, not enough because the book is supposed to be like super ooper duper feminism, and yet we still make fun of Artemis, the icon herself, the eternal maiden, the absolute beast of a warrior we make fun of by calling her arthritis? I rebuke this bad energy. I cannot possibly absorb whatever is imbued into this book. Artemis, I don't speak for them. I have no affiliation with this book. I'm as mad as you are, girl. So don't loop me in with them. So Artemis says that if they fail to make it out of the forest and are captured, that they will be killed. Okay, then on the same page, not 10 lines later, Artemis says that if you are captured, whoever captured you is going to be your partner for your first mission. It's the same page. Do you know how easy it would have been to just remove the first line about them dying if they failed? It would have changed absolutely nothing because the threat is still empty because no one died. This is only chapter 1. Do you see what I have sacrificed? Do you see what I have struggled with in silence? Although I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of cathartic to actually talk about it. So Alexis and Drex then go into the woods almost immediately. Karen, Augustus, Patro, Achilles, Agatha, and Hermos, yep, I remember their names. They all catch up to Alexis and Drex. Alexis is shot in the leg and she leaps away, which is this world's version of teleporting, which they also said was against the rules for the competition. You know, we could just cut stuff out of the book, right? Like, why mention that it's against the rules for them to leap and then have the characters do it with no consequences? That's what blows me. Like, it is so easy to take some of this stuff out and we just don't for whatever reason. Anyway, so as Alexis is teleporting away, Karen latches onto her and they both end up in the open rolling fields of Montana. So they have their first real conversation since she left them after she figured out about their betrayal or whatever. This chapter kicks off a lot of contradictions that will happen between what the male love interests say and what they actually do. For example, Alexis gets mad at Karen because he dismembered any man that touched her, got near her, and claims that he only did so because they touched her without her consent. Meanwhile, the entirety of their interactions in book 1 is touching her without her consent. This chapter also ends with him lunging at her, like FNAF jump scare style, lunging at her. So I don't want to hear this touching without consent bullshit. You obviously don't care. Oh, but it's implied consent because they're married. No, get out of here with that. So Alexis makes him mad by saying that their marriage is purely physical. This is something that comes up throughout the entire book, and for some reason, it makes Karen so mad. I don't know why. You just said that the marriage was only out of convenience. So why would it bother you if she said that the marriage is only physical? First of all, it comes out of nowhere when she says it because they're not even talking about anything sexual. Second of all, the only physical thing that happened was on their wedding day. They haven't seen each other since that day. I feel like I'm missing entire chapters of something that is really important to my comprehension of the book because I don't get it. Anyway, Karen gets so angry when she says that it's just physical that he lunges at her. So they have an altercation, and it's when Alexis is literally trapped in Karen's grip that she can't help but notice that he's hot. She says, and I quote, "Apparently I wasn't asexual. I was just into tattooed, violent, Machiavellian men." So this is a theme, a running gag for this series because it showed up in book 1 and I did say something about it, but it has shown up again in the second book. Anytime Alexis wants to make a joke about Karen or Augustus being her type, she says, "Oh my God, how could I ever think I was asexual?" The entirety of book 1 is Alexis talking about her sexual obsession with the mathematician Carl Gauss. She explained that she had wet dreams about him. She would write R-rated fan fiction about him, on top of the multiple fantasies that she had about her other male love interests. Those aren't typical markers for asexuality. Now, of course, I can recognize that asexuality doesn't necessarily mean that you have zero attraction whatsoever. There can absolutely be exceptions to the rule, and in general, people that you just find objectively attractive. As with most things, asexuality is a spectrum, which is something that I know, but the book does not know. The book uses asexuality as a punchline for a joke that is not funny and is just a mischaracterization of asexual people. Do not use asexuality as a cover for your inability to pull bitches. Because I don't know about you, but I've seen asexual people charm a room, walk out with multiple phone numbers, and mind you, again, they're asexual. They're doing that for the love of the game. Alexis is not asexual. She was never asexual. She simply had never seen a man before in her life, and the first one that gave her attention, she decided was the perfect man to go feral over. Anyway, rant over. So Alexis then proceeds to shoot Karen at point blank range and misses. Then, when she fails at that, she tases him, and it's supposed to be like, girl boss moment. My mom told me to use this in emergency, and it is. My husband's an ass. I'm so funny. But then she immediately feels bad about tasing this man and tries to stop it, which again doesn't feel very girl boss. You just said he deserved it. Karen is mildly incapacitated, but almost immediately recovers. He then wastes no time to go over to Alexis and steal a kiss, electrocuting her in the process. Augustus suddenly leaps in out of nowhere. How he knew where they went? No clue. So he finds them kissing, and because he's a cuck and likes to watch, he tells them to keep going. Alexis, who again was just angry at Karen for forcing her into an arranged marriage and had not spoken to these men since the end of book 1, folds under no pressure. So they make out for a little bit and then they decide, okay, Alexis, you are actively bleeding from a gunshot wound to the leg. We should probably get you medical attention. Alexis refuses to let them take her to a hospital and instead tries to teleport, right, to get medical help on her own. She then teleports to the underworld and tries to escape before promptly passing out. I will note that while she's in this underworld area, she hears a woman screaming. Now, as of right now, this will seem very unimportant. This is something that your mind will just glaze over. But I'm telling you now that that information will be very important at the end. So we flash into Augustus's point of view. They're at the hospital. Alexis is being treated. Hermos, the guy that shot her, yeah, he ate a bullet to the head from Karen. But because he's immortal, he's only in a coma. He's fine. Augustus is confronted by Patro and Achilles, who tell him that he is not fit to be Alexis's husband. They have a big argument, and then also in this waiting room that has all the other characters, we find out that Medusa, the Gorgon criminal, has escaped from her prison in the underworld. Now, this section is a little confusing when they're talking about Medusa, and that's mainly because the best way that I can describe this book is that it's tripping over itself to get to the next scene. It's so rushed, and as a result, doesn't have very good transitions between thoughts, to a point where a lot of the important plot information is kind of like shoehorned into people's dialogue. Case in point, Patro is arguing with another character, Agatha, about, let's just say words are exchanged, particularly Patro called Medusa a slur, and when confronted, he says, "And what about it?" So they're arguing, and then Augustus cuts them off by saying they don't fear her because she's part Gorgon. And when you read the entire text, like, it feels very out of place. It just sounds like he, and by extension the author, needs to tell us important information about Medusa, but doesn't have a better way to say it other than just having Augustus blurt it out. Anyway, the main reason that Medusa is dangerous is because she has the power of fate. What that means? No clue. We can only assume by context clues that she can tell the future. Also, what I realized when I was writing the script and going over my notes, in the news article that says that Medusa broke out of prison, they said that she killed 2 Olympians. These 2 people that died are never brought up again. I'll talk about this again when I get to the end of the book because it will be relevant, but these 2 people that she supposedly killed, we don't care about them. So after this information comes out, Alexis wakes up from her medically induced coma. She picks her partners, which are going to be Patro and Achilles. And together, they're going to go on a mission to fight Titans. Because to remind everyone, the main antagonists in this universe are supposed to be the Titans. They're not the focus in book 1, and they're not the focus in book 2. Another critique on the writing that I have is that there's really no good sense of setting or place. Chapter 5, for example, opens with Alexis teleporting into this villa, and we only find out who else is in the villa with her when she's addressing them directly. There could have very easily been just like a one-off line of Alexis saying like, "Oh yeah, I teleported to the villa where Helen, Augustus, Karen, and everyone was waiting for me." But no, you have to find out individually as she talks to each character. So they're all hiding out at the villa while they look for Medusa. Essentially, they're on lockdown. This lockdown is very quickly lifted. It doesn't stay. Alexis, Charlie, Drex, and Helen all have a sleepover in her room because they're scared to sleep with the other Thonics. In the middle of the night, Alexis gets up and she finds the dungeon in Augustus's villa where he happens to be casually torturing this woman named Ceres. And the reason that they captured her is because they believed that she was helping Theros to kill Zeus's offspring. So supposedly they were questioning her. Alexis then asks her about her involvement and deems her innocent. Alexis frees Ceres and they all go out with Augustus, Charon, Patro, and Achilles. And Alexis is like, no, you have to free her. We have to let her sleep in the villa with us. Like, I'm not taking no for an answer. They want to keep questioning her, and Helen suggests that they let Patro question her. Patro has this ability where he can detect if someone is lying or not. So he asks Ceres if she had anything to do with the murdered children, to which she says no, and Patro claims that she is telling the truth. So now with that out of the way, they decide to let Ceres free, and she sleeps in the room with everyone, and everyone goes to bed happy. The next morning, everyone wakes up and they're panicking. It's very weird when you read it in sequence. Like, it seems like they're freaking out for no reason. Again, this only becomes relevant when you read the end of the book. It's very infuriating. So Alexis and Drex have to go for training because in 1 week's time, they will have to go on a mission to hunt Titans. They are led to some kind of bunker. Again, the layout of this villa, how big it is, I couldn't tell you. So when Alexis sees the bunker, it brings up a memory from her past, a very odd one, might I say. Alexis is staring at the doors and she says, "My kidneys twinged with phantom pain." Again, the bane of my existence. This phrase was used so frequently in book 1, and we do not change that same framework in book 2. We need to get this woman a thesaurus. There are so many other ways to describe a pain that isn't actually real, but you can feel. Continuing, she says, "Bomb shelters in Montana were infamously used to store harvested organs," which initially, when I read that, made me believe that Alexis did have one of her organs harvested. The only indication I had that she didn't actually have her kidney taken was that she uses kidneys plural, but otherwise, like, it sounds like she had one of her kidneys taken. Yes or no? Anyway, that was already very weird because it's just that one line and then we don't go back to it. But this is actually part of a very elaborate and for some reason very frequent organ harvesting joke that runs through the entire book. Now, I don't know if this was in book 1. I might have blocked it out due to trauma, but I do not remember this at all in Blood of Hercules. The joke is so elaborate that Alexis goes on in a different chapter to talk about a program that she had to do in her school called SOAR, which stands for Snatching Organ Resistance Education. Let's take a look at all the organ harvesting jokes, shall we? Because surely it's not overkill. Surely it's only referenced like a completely normal and stomachable amount of times. So chapter 1, we have rural Montana had prepared me for 2 things: selling my organs on the black market and cult life. Haha, funny. Chapter 6, that's the my kidneys twinged with phantom pain joke. Chapter 9, every year we had an assembly on SOAR, Snatching Organ Resistance Education. Chapter 10, I'd met organ snatchers who were more well-adjusted than them. There were some good, hardworking harvesters out there. Ha ha, I'm keeled over in laughter. Chapter 20, there's a trailer from the area that Alexis used to live at and has a sign that says, "Private property, organ harvesters beware." Chapter 32, Alexis gets drunk and tries to sell off one of her kidneys, to which her love interests say, "For the last time, you're not selling your organs for money." Ha. Ha. The fact that I have to say tone down the organ selling jokes because it's overused is crazy. So Alexis's goal with this whole training is that she has to try and shoot Charon and Augustus at least once. They're in like a simulated battlefield or whatever, and Alexis runs into Charon and once again taunts him with the "it's just physical" line. Charon taunts Alexis back, and again, the guy who said, "Men who touch you without consent don't deserve to live," then proceeds to choke slam her against a tree. Training ends and Alexis hits the showers because for some reason there are also locker rooms. The concept of a Italian villa also having like my high school gym locker room is crazy to me. Augustus is really confused as to why her aim is really bad, and that's because, if you'll remember, Alexis is blind and deaf? Yeah, but only on one side of her face. So she's blind in one eye and deaf in one ear. But they don't know that. For some reason, she never told them. I don't know why. So they don't know that she can't see out of one eye. So they claim that her aim is very bad. Statistically, she should have been able to at least hit a target once, and she didn't. Which is interesting that they point out, because previous to this, like within a couple lines, I was gonna say paragraphs, Alexis aimed at Karen and fired and just narrowly missed him. Like, she was going to hit a headshot, but he jumped out of the way. So for them to claim that her aim is really bad after just doing that seems a bit inconsistent, especially because moving past this point, she gets into fights with other monsters and seemingly has no problem with her depth perception. So they go to the locker rooms and Alexis is really flustered because naked men, despite the fact that she's married to these dudes. She is 20 years old going on 7. So the minute that she sees her husband's naked, she absolutely goes red in the face. She truly is the definition of a sexy baby. The next chapter is in Patro's perspective, and funny enough, it actually made me like Patro and Achilles significantly more than any of the other characters, because Patro explains that the reason he wanted for Alexis to get married to them was so that they could essentially have a lavender marriage. Patro knows that if they get married to any other Olympian, that they wouldn't understand the relationship between them, or that they would try to get in between, which is so funny to me because this deal would actually fit so much better with the marriage of convenience trope that is supposed to be in this series. Like, it's actually convenient if they get married. Alexis doesn't actually want to be with these dudes. They don't actually want to be with her, but it's mutually beneficial. But obviously, we didn't want to go that route because it was easy and made sense. And as you will soon find out, this book also hates gay people, so we couldn't possibly give them a happy ending. This chapter also made me laugh, which was a nice break from what the book actually considers humor, because Patro and Achilles are in the shower and they are having sex, right? And Patro is trying to come up with a plan to get Alexis on their side, and in between him explaining it, he's getting back shots. Just imagining him trying to like get these words out. I'm sorry, that made me chuckle. We then flash forward 1 week to the morning of their mission fight with the Titans. Alexis is then getting ready for her Titan fight. Augustus is helping to strap her up with weapons and armor and a whole bunch of stuff. This is the first time that we see Augustus fawning over her, at least somewhat resembling a kind and caring husband. Now, the reason that we get to see his more gentle side is because he believes that because she's a woman, she's fundamentally not capable of fighting. Fundamentally is the word he uses. Oh my God. That just like truly baffles me. Like, all the powerful female figures in Greek mythology, you have Athena, Demeter, Persephone, Artemis, Aphrodite, like these women, and that's just like a handful, right? There are so many other powerful women in Greek mythology. And to have these characters say that women are fundamentally, arguably the word he's trying to say is biologically inept at fighting is wild. Honestly, it's moments like these where I'm like, how does anyone think that this book is feminist? People like this man. People think that this is a good man. And worse than that, our main girl, Alexis, our girl boss slay pussy queen, the girl that always insists on never accepting help from men, even if she needs it, says, and I quote, "I wanted to collapse into his arms and let him shield me from the world. There was no doubt in my mind that he'd protect me. He's always been vocal about women not having to fight. The idea of sitting back and relaxing while someone else handled everything was intoxicating." Which, you know, if she had expressed this desire to like not fight, I would have been like, okay, for the moment that she wants to quit, to be in the presence of a man that already thinks that she is lesser than is brutal. She is literally submitting to a man that thinks she is weaker biologically based on her gender. We double down on this. It's like one after the other, because then after Augustus sends her on her way, she goes to Karen, who makes fun of her for being a woman, and he says, "You're the newbie and a woman." And when she tells him that that's sexist, he doesn't deny it. Which a lot of times when authors are trying to write something edgy, they assume that just by acknowledging something is bad, that it makes it okay, which is the equivalent of saying, yeah, my boyfriend's racist, but he knows not to say those things in front of me. That doesn't make your boyfriend any less racist. Acknowledging when someone does something up doesn't win you any consolation prizes. Also, why? Why did he have to say this? There were so many other ways for him to like kind of tease her for being the weakling and the newbie without insulting her on the basis of gender. And people like this man. I have to reiterate, people think that these two men are just itty bitty. They're such like softies when you peel back all the layers of oppression and misogyny and racism. I truly have so many questions. Like, I cannot understand why anyone likes these books. I've asked people to explain to me what they found charming about this book, what they like, and the only answer I've gotten is the vibes. The vibes of your own oppression? Release yourself from the cage of your mind. This book is pissing on you and calling it rain. I cannot tell you the amount of interviews that I've read with the author where she says that it was very important for her to have a strong female main character. Someone who is independent, who doesn't need a man, who is strong and quirky and funny, and yet submits to a man that thinks she's below him purely because of her gender. And that's a love interest that she also claims is redeemable. Surely we cannot be existing in the same timeline. Surely you are from the 1460s and I'm over here living in the present day. Because genuinely, what the f***? Moving on. Because it somehow gets more offensive from here. Alexis, Patro, and Achilles all leap away to go fight Titans in Rome. The comedic timing is impeccable, and the funniest part is that it's not intentional. After Alexis proclaims that she wants Augustus to make her a trad wife, she gets mad at Patro and Achilles for making plans. She says, and I quote, "Oh great, men making all the important decisions. You just wanted for Augustus to make you his happy little trad wife, protecting you and taking care of you because you are inept at fighting. To remind everyone, this is Hercules. This is supposed to be the Hercules. Inept at fighting." She wasn't mad about that, but she's mad about these people who are objectively more experienced than her making plans. This chapter is particularly heinous because the minute Alexis starts losing an argument to Patro, she resorts to her factory settings, which include homophobia. Yeah. So now that they're alone, Achilles and Patro decide to approach Alexis with a proposition. They tell her that she can get out of her marriage bond by bringing Augustus and Karen to the brink of death. If she does this, then she will be freed. They are offering her an escape from a marriage that she has claimed over and over she doesn't want. Alexis refuses because she doesn't want to hurt them, and Patro does get a little angry about it. Okay, I'm gonna say yes. He gets aggravated because, again, he wants her to break the marriage bond so that she can get married to them and they can have their lavender marriage. So he kind of like blows up and he essentially tells her that she will not be able to satisfy Augustus and Karen sexually, because truly that is the worst insult you can say to a woman. That's heavy on the sarcasm. He also claims that Karen is sexually violent and essentially says that he would probably hurt her. Now, granted, the way he says it is not nice. He is being mean to her, but he didn't lie. So in response to Patro's taunts, Alexis says, "Careful, you almost sound jealous. Do you wish Karen would have chosen you?" So this is a textbook response when a straight person is losing an argument to a gay person. It's literally, "It's not my fault you're like in love with me or something." It's something that people say to immediately devalue a gay person's argument, reducing them to their sexual orientation. It insinuates that the only reason, their only motivation for anything is their own sexual or romantic interests. Patro is visibly taken back, like he is upset by her saying this. She doubles down and says, "Aw," which is already very like dehumanizing, taunting, like she is looking down. She says, "Aw, do you wish you too could have married him? Is that what this is about? Are you mad Karen chose a pathetic girl over you?" That is vile. That is so vicious. Oh my God. Now, this is a problem for me because this conversation could have kept the same energy but been shifted a little bit. She could have framed it as Patro being jealous because Karen and Augustus have her, the object of jealousy being her, as opposed to, oh, Patro is jealous because he wanted Karen, which also would have made sense because it's true. He did want to marry Alexis. It would have made more sense for the plot, but no, we choose homophobia. There are so many ways that she could have insulted him in this moment, but she chooses actively to hit him below the belt. On top of the fact that Alexis's snake companion, Nyx, if you'll remember, anytime Alexis acts out of pocket, she says something that she shouldn't, Nyx just eggs her on, and she makes sweeping generalizations about men to justify Alexis's cruelty. In this instance, when Alexis says, oh, are you jealous because you wanted Karen for yourself? Nyx responds and says, ruin him. Men don't deserve to feel good about themselves. Make him cry, which is already weird for Nyx to say because just going with the flow of their dialogue, it doesn't make sense. Alexis's insult was not aimed to bring Patro down a peg. It wasn't him acting high and mighty. She did it to hurt him. Alexis's response in this moment is not her punching up. She's punching down because she's choosing homophobia, and Nyx, her companion, is egging her on. Which again, Patro and Achilles aren't necessarily good people either, but wow, it was very unwarranted, I will say. And especially because, like, what are we trying to say? What are we trying to say? I just can't stop thinking of the real world implications. This section ends with Alexis revealing that she knows Roman Sign Language. This is a big point of contention because Achilles, who, if you'll remember, has a muzzle and is unable to speak, his main form of communication is through sign language. And he had been communicating with Patro for the entirety of this book and the last one, but they didn't know that Alexis knew what they were saying. They continued to argue, which, keeping in step to resorting to the most diabolically offensive comebacks when you're losing, Patro says that it's a betrayal that she didn't tell them she knew sign language because, quote, they put up with her weak woman, powerless Olympian bullshit. Like, if we had just crossed out woman, the sentence would have still made sense. So as Alexis is storming away, they are ambushed by titans that have wings. Up until this point, supposedly, because I don't remember seeing any of these titans before now, they don't have wings. They're not supposed to have wings. They're mutating, and we don't know why. Very quickly, before any of the fight starts, Patro is thrown like a rag doll and gets his neck snapped. I thought he died. I was like, oh my God, we're actually gonna get the myth. No. Patro is fine, he is just in a coma. This, I was cackling. This is the most genuine laugh that has ever come out of me from reading these books. Achilles picks up Patro, who is injured, and he's like, oh my God, I need to get my little schnookums some medical care. He looks at Alexis, who is actively running away from Titans, and is like, and leaps out of existence. I was laughing so hard. I'm not supposed to be. This is supposed to be a very big betrayal. I was cackling because keep in mind, Alexis has the full capability to teleport away if she wanted to. At the start of the chapter where she has to fight the Titans, she says that she's choosing not to teleport away because she doesn't want to prove to the men that they were right about her needing help from others. But then they make it seem like the reason she didn't teleport away was because she had to protect the humans in Rome, which again goes back to my point that the book is not proofread, because at the start of the chapter where they arrive in Rome, she says that the population was decimated. Nobody is there. And then all of a sudden, she's surrounded by an entire crowd of people that have cameras and are recording her. Where did they come from? Because we were led to believe that no one was supposed to be here, that the entire population was gone. And all of a sudden, they show up. And again, Alexis had already decided that she was not going to teleport away. She doesn't find out that people are there until later on. So her noble reason for protecting the humans is bullshit. Like, that's not her reason. In this fight, Alexis starts praying to God. I am not joking. I don't know what prayer this is. I'm going to put it on the screen if I find it. She starts praying to God. She is Hercules. She is an immortal being that has magical powers, and she prays to God. Aren't you God? It will never not baffle me that God exists in this universe. I will say that in this chapter, when she's fighting the Titans, we get like the most diabolical voice narration. And this time, it's not actually the narrator's fault, it's the writing. So while Alexis is fighting the Titan, she is shooting her gun at it, right? The only sound effect that the author assigns to the sound of a gunshot is the word pop. So Alexis lets off a flurry of shots at the Titans, to which we hear, I'm just going to put it in for you, because if I had to hear this in my ears, you're going to hear it too.
Pop, 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 pop.
Wow. What a lot of plosives. Do you know how many times we get these fight scenes? How many times we hear shots ring out? How many times the word pop is said in this book? Now, if I could just provide some examples of other noises.
That's the silencer. That's the grenade launcher.
Yeah, there are other ways to convey this sound. It doesn't all have to be pop. Alexis fights the Titan with the help of Nyx and her animal companion, Fluffy Jr. Don't even get me started on the name Fluffy Jr. He turns into a horse because when she got him, he was a dog. Anyway, she fights off the Titans. She gets her ear chopped off and almost gets her ass ate before Augustus and Karen show up to help her. She is absolutely wrecked. Karen sees that her ear is missing, gets so distraught, cuts off his own ear and attaches it to her face. Because in this world, they can accept transplants of any part of their bodies if they sew it on in time. So he gives her his ear. They then all go to a safe house where Augustus is helping clean Alexis up. Now, I was laughing because when Augustus offers to help her, he specifically mentions, this is a very big important part of this scene. Augustus says that he has to take off her clothes, but that he's only gonna do it to help her warm up because it was raining and he doesn't want her in wet clothes. And he promises that he's not gonna look at her and that he will be respectful. Now, if this were any book, I would not do anything because this is the bare minimum. I think that the little lines like this that are peppered throughout the book are a very obvious response to the backlash of book 1. There is a stark difference between Augustus's actions and what he says, which leads me to believe that the author wanted to keep these men vicious and cruel as they were in book 1, but the editor forced her to add a couple of extra lines of dialogue or otherwise internal thoughts to make these men seem redeemable, or at the very least mildly respectful. And I say this because despite Augustus's promise to not look at her naked body and otherwise be respectful of her, the next chapter opens with Alexis, who is half comatose and wakes up to a man on top of her that she did not consent to, might I add. So let me give you some context. Augustus put Karen and Alexis in a medically induced coma because of their injuries. Karen wakes up first and Alexis is slow to come out of it. The chapter opens with her eyes are not even open. She is half conscious. She's not really sure where she is. She hears Karen's voice and initially thinks that he's the Grim Reaper. She has not recognized who he is. So while half conscious and completely dazed, Karen's got her boob in his mouth. Augustus over here on the sidelines, egging Karen on, saying, "Oh, she likes it, keep going." She has not said the words, yes, or I consent, or anything. She woke up to this. They have zero regard to her injuries because she was in a coma before they start giving her the old razzle dazzle. So the consent that she gives in this situation is not of her own free will. It is very much coerced because the actions were already happening to her and she just gave the consent retroactively, as opposed to like waiting until she was fully conscious to properly get her consent before they started this. It honestly read as though she just like gave in and let it happen and was like, well, might as well. You're already here. Now, if I had a nickel for every book about a girl that was in a coma and had another man trying to f her while she was in said coma, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Now, when Alexis fully gains consciousness, quote unquote, like she opens her eyes, she gives us the most diabolical description of a man's penis that I have ever heard. And it's repeated frequently throughout this book. And I'm a child, I couldn't stop laughing. She describes the male appendage as weeping. He's got a sad little willy. It's just, I'm sorry, that was so funny to me. And I know it's not supposed to be, but I have to take the laughs where I can find them. Anyway, they decide to stop because they remember that she's injured, and they teleport her back to the villa. Alexis also finds out about her ear, and she gets upset because the ear that Karen replaced is actually the ear that she can't hear out of anyway. So Karen has now messed up his own hearing when Alexis couldn't have used the ear anyway. So they go back to the villa, and surprise, surprise, guess who's waiting for them? Patro and Achilles. Patro's alive! No one's mentioning that he almost died. So Augustus and Karen are murderous. They are very upset that Achilles essentially left her for dead. And Alexis tries to calm them down, but she is sure to mention that she is mad at Patro and Achilles, which is wild to me because Patro didn't leave you. Her anger towards him is not justified. So the boys all start fighting, and Alexis realizes that she can feel their pain. They share a marriage bond, as I already said, and apparently it also connects their feelings, but the only way that Karen and Augustus find out that they share her pain is because Karen accidentally, I don't know, throws his elbow back into Alexis's stomach so hard that she doubles over in pain, and by extension, it makes them collapse in pain. There is no apology to Alexis after this, which I find very funny. Again, he abused his wife. So when they figure this out, Alexis lies and says that she is not able to feel their pain. They are only able to feel hers. And the reason she lies is because she doesn't want them to, quote unquote, coddle her. The chapter ends with Alexis breaking up the fight, once again proclaiming that she's a strong, independent woman, and stealing all of their pets and leaving. Weird. Anyway, we jump forward a month. Karen is splitting his knuckles open with a punching bag. Like, he is just going ham on this thing, and we conveniently forget that Alexis is supposed to be sharing his pain. There is never any mention to this instance. Alexis is never like, oh my god, my hands hurt because Karen has been punching this punching bag all day. As a little spoiler for the rest of the book, we forget that Alexis is supposed to also feel their pain until it becomes necessary. It's only brought up again when we need to have a "who did this to you" moment. This chapter is weird and wildly contradictory for me. So Augustus and Karen are watching a video because someone recorded the fight that Alexis had with the Titan. And for some reason, they're surprised that she fought the Titan. They thought that she was injured trying to run away from them, which I find contradictory because when Augustus and Karen arrived on the scene, Augustus saw that the Titans were mostly defeated. Like, they were bloodied, whatever, like they were almost incapacitated. He brands them with Alexis's little stamp to show that she was the one that defeated the Titans. So if he already believed that she was the one that defeated them, why is he suddenly now surprised that she fought off the Titans? The only purpose of this chapter is for Karen and Augustus to be like, oh my god, Alexis, our wife, is actually strong. Oh my god, I thought like certainly her boobs would get in the way of her fighting and throwing a punch, but like I guess her ovaries weren't weighing her down this time. Maybe she's different from other women. Maybe her womb isn't sagging with the pressures of childbirth, and that's why she's a good fighter. But not other women, because yeah, like that totally affects them still. Very odd chapter, but we continue. Alexis is getting more training for the upcoming Spartan Gladiator competition, also known as the SGC. Karen and Augustus are trying to win her back because she's been giving them the silent treatment. At one point, they confront her in a hallway, corridor, whatever, in the villa, and she teleports away to Helen's room, which is still in the villa. This baffles me because she teleports to Helen's room and locks the door, and it somehow manages to keep Augustus and Karen, who are A, crazy, and B, can teleport, out of the room. They wanted to talk to Alexis, and they are acting like a locked door was gonna stop that from happening. They could have either broken down the door or teleported inside and did neither of those things. So they eventually give up, and then the chapter also reminds us that Charlie still exists. We haven't heard from Charlie since before Alexis broke Ceres out of prison. So this is very obviously another clear moment where the author was like, oh, I have to remind everyone that these people exist. So not only do we get a refresher on Charlie, but also Ceres and Medusa, because Medusa's still on the loose, in case you forgot. Then Alexis gets another knock on the door. This time, it's Patro and Achilles. They approach her once again with the proposition of almost killing her husband to break the marriage bond. Alexis says no, she doesn't want to do this, but they end up stabbing a syringe into her and taking her blood because, again, it's poisonous. And they're like, this is for when you change your mind. The writing in this section is so particularly bad that you once again have characters that literally have to drop important plot information with a, by the way, insert extremely relevant plot info you need to know, but the author has no way of incorporating fluidly into my dialogue, so I'm forced to say it in a one-off line. This important info because, again, they are arguing about the marriage bond, and before Patro leaves, he hits us with a, by the way, Ceres is really dangerous. She might not have been lying about, killing those kids, but she was lying about something. I can tell, but I don't know what it is, despite the fact that I'm a human lie detector. Then we continue simultaneously while Alexis is having this conversation with Patro and Achilles. Augustus and Karen decide that they're gonna find whoever made Alexis deaf in her ear. So they go to Montana and visit the trailer park that she grew up in, and for some reason, all the men in this trailer park abuse their wives. The needless violence against women, even the ones that are NPCs in this book series, is beyond baffling. Again, this is supposed to be the feminist literature of our generation. So they find out in this trailer park that supposedly someone told everyone that they couldn't help Alexis and Charlie, and if they did, they would be turned into grizzly food. So for some reason, their neighbors were all threatened. And also, while Augustus and Karen are interrogating people, they knock on someone's trailer door and stumble upon a primordial being, literally a magical dude that just leaps out of existence, and we never hear about him. Augustus and Karen have 2 seconds where they're like, oh my God, who is this magical dude that was living in the trailer park that Alexis just so happened to come from? Surely he's important. And then they immediately forget about him. Now, I have no doubt that he will become relevant in book 3, but I hate all of these loose ends that are intentionally scattered in this book. So they then go to visit the prison where Alexis's foster father is being held. If we'll remember, in book 1, he was arrested for allegedly killing his wife, but it was actually Alexis. So they capture him and put him in the dungeon in the villa, but they decide that they're not going to kill him and they're gonna leave it up to Alexis because they're trying this new thing where they're good people and they trust their wife. And it's very hard for them because, how can you really trust women these days? They're so sensitive with their emotions and stuff. What if she's stupid and says, killing is wrong and we should let her dad live? These are the guys that people like. I'm losing brain cells as we speak. The next morning, Alexis stumbles upon Karen and Augustus, and the night before they had tried giving her a gift, and this is when she actually opens it. She finds a graphing calculator that is bulletproof and comes with a microphone so she can record her diary. Don't be fooled. This is going to be extremely relevant later on in the book. So we now jump to the Initiation Massacre, which I have to tell you is not on the schedule that was laid out to us at the beginning of the book. We had the Titan killing mission, the SGC, the Assembly of Death chase. The Initiation Massacre was not amongst those things. This chapter, I swear to you, is the most incomprehensible thing I have ever read. I listened to the audiobook. I reread it like the physical copy. I cannot tell you what is happening. This has to be an unedited chapter. I don't know how. It must have slipped through the cracks or something, or we're missing other chapters that are supposed to come before and after to give us more context, because I cannot possibly explain to you what happens in this section. So Alexis wakes up and she's talking to Ceres. Ceres apparently finds something called an umlaut, which I looked it up and they said it's apparently something in German. I don't know. This is Greek Roman mythology. I'm confused. And this umlaut that is uber important is never mentioned again. Never. Not even in passing, not even a, hey, remember when I found that really important thing? Nothing. Ceres is going on this rant because apparently there's also a language of predestination. She talks about predestination, which I was already confused about, and I thought, okay, maybe she's talking about seeing the future. It's a very specific term that relates to Christianity. Nothing Sari says in this chapter makes a lick of sense. I cannot tell you what is happening here. And somehow it is extremely important for the end of the book, specifically because Alexis sees a symbol on a piece of paper that disappears, and Sari acts like she has no idea what Alexis is talking about. And this symbol relates to Alexis's powers. You know, like the main motivator of this book. So we get this cluster of dialogue from Sari, and then we immediately go to Alexis, who is summoned by Augustus and Karen. She goes to the dining room where she finds Patro and Achilles tied up because while they were away, Karen looked into the eyes of his little demon dogs and figured out that they were plotting with Alexis to break the marriage bond. Now, Alexis does not clarify that she told him she doesn't want to do this because she was like, no, I'm done apologizing to men. I have just remembered that I'm a strong, independent woman. So Alexis is mad that they have tied up Patro and Achilles, and Karen essentially says, like, you're unarmed, what are you gonna do? To which Alexis pulls out her pet snake, Nyx, and Nyx reveals herself. I'm gonna remind everyone that the main canon, the one thing we kept consistent across these two books is that Nyx is invisible. No one is supposed to be able to see her. The only person that could was Alexis. That was the one thing we managed to keep consistent in this book. And yet, all of a sudden, we break the canon out of nowhere because Nyx is not supposed to just magically make herself visible. And yet she does it for no reason. Because when Karen and Augustus see Nyx, they're like, that's a really bad monster. That's a monster that we're ordered to kill on sight. And Alexis is like, why? She's my friend. I love her. You can't kill her. And Karen and Augustus tell her that her bite is so deadly and lethal that it can kill Spartan children. And Alexis acts as if this is mind-boggling information when we have seen Nyx multiple times killing people with her bite. In her initiation massacre that Alexis was a part of in book 1, that's the reason she wins. Nyx bites all of her enemies and they die instantly. Now, this does spoil a little bit of what happens at the end, but essentially, when earlier in the book, Alexis was teleported to the underworld, right? She has Nyx kill off some of the guards. So she knows that Nyx's bite is venomous. She knows that her snake is deadly. So for her to act as if this is surprising information now is completely insane. It doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. Alexis also acts surprised that the reason that Karen found out about this plan was because he looked through the eyes of his little demon dogs when this was the big reveal at the end of book 1. Alexis found out that Karen was spying on her because he is able to look through the eyes of his animal companions, and yet when she finds this out a second time, this is surprising information to her. Again, the book is not proof read. So Alexis forces them to pretend like they never saw Nyx so they don't have to kill her, and they're like, okay. They then get back to the point at hand, which is that they're mad that Alexis wanted to break the marriage bond. Karen and Augustus go Joker on themselves and are like, okay, if you want to break the bond, we'll give it to you. They cut their mouths open. The description of the scene is that they drag the knife across their cheek, lips, and tongue. Okay, so they split that open, okay, and they drink her blood. This is all voluntary, by the way. The blood only needs to come in contact with you to kill you. It does not need to touch their open wounds. There is no reason for them to cut themselves like this. So then they start fucking dying. And while they're doing so, they decide it's the perfect time to berate her. Specifically, Karen is just reading her to filth for no reason. Again, that is his wife. He says, I guess you really are just another pathetic girl who's never had to do anything herself. Which is a crazy specific thing to be saying in this moment. This is immediately followed. I'm not kidding. The next dialogue we get from Karen is, God, I'm sorry, I'm not good enough for you. Like, what is this emotional whiplash? Why? We are going back and forth. Like, you cannot suddenly be redeemable just because you're like, I'm not good enough for you. You just said that she was pathetic. Regardless, Alexis is distraught that they're dying. And she's like, no, I don't want them to die. I kind of like them. I love them. So she manages to stop the poisoning. Her skin starts glowing and she compares herself to an anglerfish. It's a whole weird thing about sexual dimorphism also. You can look that up. But anyway, her skin glowing is an important thing. The near-death experience that these men just faced does nothing to quell the lust in their loins, because almost immediately, the second this man is rehabilitated, Karen threatens to her. And when they ask Alexis why she decided to save them, she claims that she wants to try and make the marriage work. And the chapter ends with us remembering that Patro and Achilles are still here and witnessed all of this go down.